This week we had an amazing opportunity to speak with Immanuel Wilkins, one of the leading saxophonists on the New York scene right now. Immanuel is a graduate of the Juilliard School and has played with some of the world's finest jazz musicians, heavyweights such as Wynton Marsalis, Gerald Clayton, and more. We discussed various topics, including his debut album, Omega, as well as his approach to music from practicing to finding his own voice. Enjoy. Wondering, how did this all come together, and how did you set up this collaboration with Blue Note?
Yeah, it came about, it started off on the road with Jason Moran. He took me out on the road, and I had a band already, and we had been playing for maybe a year and a half or so. And I had asked Jason to produce the record on the road, and he had told me to wait initially. But one of the gigs we did in LA, he had reached out to Don Was, the president of Blue Note, to come through the gig. And he heard me there. We talked a little bit afterwards. And then once it was time to record the record, Jason sent it to him, and Don was interested. So
sure. But some of these songs are as old as since you were in high school. Like, how did you go about compiling all of them? And
yeah, man, a lot of it was just kind of trying to find the best music out of the repertoire that the band had at first initially. And then it kind of got into figuring out what's the through line of all the music. What is like kind of the overall narrative about just, I don't know, like what my music up until now, I was kind of writing about the subject matter. And I kind of stumbled upon this idea of like abject sublime, like stuff that's like really grotesque and it's also like super beautiful at the same time, just juxtaposing the two kind of right next to each other. And so the record kind of became about finding stuff in the repertoire that did that within like intra song wise, but then also like just, maybe tune to tune. So there are some songs where it's like just about, beauty. And then there's some songs that are just about, grotesque material or, abjecture. But then there's also tunes that kind of embody both things within the same song,
Yeah, how did you come upon that idea of this sort of abject sublime? How did you sort of settle on that kind of a theme for the album?
It really kind of came about thinking about how I wanted to speak to Black communities. I feel like my music has always been kind of at some sort of intersection between like Black identity and spirituality in a way. And so a lot of the music was kind of geared towards like trying to figure out what it actually means to hear what Blackness kind of sounds like, and yeah. I've been interested in that in like fashion or art, like I can look at a Kerry James Marshall painting or a David Hammond's or a Glenn Ligon, and it like there's something that actually looks it looks Black, and so I was interested into like what does it mean to like sound Black, I think jazz is like, what's interesting about jazz is it's like I say Black music in general is the only situation where we really see Black people like fully actualized, in a space, and so I think that there is something that kind of codifies what, I don't know, like the African American sound is, regarding, blues music, soul music, funk music, jazz music, etc., hip hop.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of interested in like it's the idea of like when we're living life, we're living life on two planes consistently. One of, like I said, supreme abjecture and then supreme sublimity. Like Dave Chappelle, Black Twitter, TikTok. All of these things are like in waves. Making light in a way of super grotesque material. Slave Play, it's a play by Jeremy O'Harris that just got like 12 Tony nominations. And that's facing a lot of like a lot of backlash right now for that kind of reason. It's like, man, how you gonna like make light of this, kind of horrific kind of idea, So yeah, I mean, I think black life in general is much about those two things kind of juxtaposed against each other all the time.
Yeah. So why did Jason Moran tell you to wait to record the album? Were you still in school at the time?
I was still in school, but I think it was partially because he hadn't heard the band, and I think he encouraged me to do a lot of research too. He told me, he was like, man, check out everybody's first record. Me and him kind of had not opposing viewpoints on a first album, but maybe he really stressed the idea of like the fact that it's your first record.
Yeah.
Booker Little died at 23. I'm putting my first record out when I'm 23. So it is important to kind of, think about what the statement's going to be, what you want the tone to be. But then also I had heard from Kendrick Scott, who asked the same question to Terrence Blanchard. Terrence was like, man, it's all about a body of work. It's about building a larger body of work. It's not about one record. So hearing both kind of things in my ear was actually good for me. It kind of balanced myself out in terms of what I thought about the first record. I was serious about it, and I mean the band was serious. We were prepared, so it wasn't no thing like we went in the studio and we played it like it was another gig. But I also didn't have that stress on me like, oh man, I did have kind of the big picture aspect of like, this is one in hopefully many. So.
And when you were checking out these debut records, were there any that sort of stood out to you, or that you?
Yeah, I mean Jason's first record, Steve Coleman's first record,
Okay.
Ambrose Akinmusiri's first record. Yeah, those were main ones. He basically encouraged me to check out like people who are still alive, their first records, like what was their kind of how they go about things. Greg Osby's first record. Yeah, and he also like stressed to me that the fact that like some people's first record like were a flop.
Yeah.
So like understanding, and I've always been about this too. It's like getting down to like the real DNA of like what makes something good, what makes something bad, and just trying to find like the deepest layer of all of those things, because I feel like that's really the key to growth and doing things right.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We wanted to kind of talk a little bit about your approaches with acting as a sideman versus leading a band, and how you kind of approach those two different maybe mindsets.
Yeah, man, it's cool because I feel like, well, I did start to lead a band when I was really young. I started leading a band maybe I was like probably 15 or 16 in Philadelphia.
Sure.
I didn't really have like a cohesive like band sound or had like I didn't call the same musicians all the time, but I had gotten used to what it meant to like put people together, put a show together, put a set together, and rehearse, and what it did was it really kind of gave me context and it helped me be a better sideman, because I understood like what the demands were as a leader, what a leader wanted, and I also realized like how to realize a band leader's vision. I think that's the most important thing in terms of the playing that a sideman can do, is really like hop on the bandwagon in terms of what the leader is envisioning, trying to get inside of their head in terms of like what the real meaning behind the music is. Not extra musical, but actual like the musical meaning, behind each phrase. And figuring out how to like realize that and then take it, then project yourself onto it. It's like you got to figure out what they wanted when they wrote this, and then you got to say, okay, now I'm playing this, so like what do I bring to that, you know? So yeah, they work hand in hand. They're like, as much as they're different, they're also very the same. I tend to take a lot of liberties as a sideman, partially because I want to be stubborn in a way, you know. I want people to call me because it's me, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people like when they call me, is that I kind of I act as a leader as well, you know. In the sideman situations, I think like a leader, you know, in terms of decision making, and I take risks, you know. I think that's one of the biggest things. Is like, you still want to make the most out of the music. Like, you serve the music more than you serve the leader, in my opinion, you know. And if you think that way, I mean, obviously you want to listen to what they have to say, but ultimately, if they're not saying anything to me, I'm trusting the music above anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you talked a lot about sort of being still yourself, at least within the confines of what the leader is trying to go for. And I was wondering a little bit about that, sort of your own creative voice and finding that and developing that. What kind of ways do you go about sort of carving out your own voice inside the jazz sort of language?
Yeah, man, finding your own voice is interesting. I feel like it's actually it's extra musical. It's philosophical. It's mostly about your values, and figuring out how to like project that onto the music. Other than that, it comes down to, I think what's really nice about being a musician is that we kind of act as curators in a way. We get to curate our own like sound. You know, we get to curate our own compositions. And what I mean by that is, like, I can pick like 10 people I want to sound like. I can learn to sound like them, like take different aspects of their playing, you know, and by choosing these like tidbits of John Coltrane, tidbits of Charlie Parker, tidbits of Lester Young, tidbits of Johnny Hodges, tidbits of Benny Carter, tidbits of Ornette Coleman. Now I'm able to find myself within that because I'm the sole chooser, because I'm the curator, you know? Like that. And I think it's always been like that, you know, like John Coltrane, you know, and Dexter Gordon, or, you know, Eric Dolphy, Charlie Parker, Ornette Coleman and Charlie Parker, or, you know, Charlie Parker and Lester Young. It was always this kind of idea of like, well, like there's a direct link, and I'm me because of what I choose to do differently. Like Charlie Parker was like, man, I'm going to play more, you know, I'm going to play more than Lester Young, but I'm gonna like play with the same like quote unquote coolness that Lester played with, you know. So, you know, it's like a combination of like imitation and then also like some soul searching in terms of like what you feel you can bring to the music and what's missing, you know.
Yeah. So would you say that I mean, you talked about your influences and sort of taking different aspects of their playing, putting it into yours. Would you say that's more of a conscious decision when you play? Like you want to sound like John Coltrane or Ornette Coleman or somebody like that? Or do you think it just sort of sneaks into your playing just passively, I guess, by listening?
I like it to seep in passively. I think that's the most organic way. I think the work is behind the scenes, you know. It's all about, you know, the practice sessions in terms of emulation, in that way. And then once you get in the bandstand, I try to not think of those things yet. Sometimes it does seep into the consciousness. Someone actually, this great piano player, Fareed Barron, told me, he hit me to this thing about the John Coltrane Quartet, where basically anytime like Train would play this thing, like he would do this like, and that was apparently an ode to like Fats Waller, you know. And so that was like that's an example that I can think of a conscious decision to kind of acknowledge something or I consciously put it into the space versus let it seep in passively. So I think it's a blend, but I would say it's like 80-20.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about Philadelphia. You grew up just outside Philadelphia, but I'm assuming you spent a lot of time playing in the city. Philadelphia's got an extremely rich jazz heritage and a great legacy of jazz. John Coltrane spent some time there. Christian McBride, McCoy Tyner, they're from Philadelphia. Do you feel that sort of presence? Is jazz a big presence in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I think 100%. I owe a lot of my development, a lot of my sound, and a lot of I guess kind of my mindset towards the music to Philadelphia. You're right. The influence of John Coltrane on Philadelphia is supreme in a lot of ways. Like I always tell people this, like if you go to jam sessions, what's interesting about Philly is like you'll like instead of them playing like I don't know maybe up jump spring or I don't know something like that, they're calling like resolution or passion dance or impressions.
Wow.
And people play it for 30 minutes 40 minutes
Wow.
so
get to Philadelphia sometime, man.
Yeah, man, no, it's deep. And I didn't realize that it was different until I moved to New York, and I'm like, oh yeah, so that's like not normal.
Yeah.
But it was always this kind of, it was a spiritual thing. It was like everybody on the bandstand was always kind of dedicated to like reaching for something deeper, something higher. And that, that was really special for me. It wasn't just about playing for 40 minutes. It was like, no, we're trying to get there. We're trying to find a place.
Yeah.
And it was special to me because everyone was on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some people were just up there playing for 40 minutes. Everyone was like, nah, like we trying to hit, we trying to go higher,
It's crazy, man.
Yeah, and that kind of soul searching and like reaching for spirituality, did that relate a lot with the fact that you were going to church and stuff, and that was sort of your introduction to the instrument, right? Or...
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it was, yeah, exactly. I think I was getting that like spiritual food from both realms. It's like whether I was going to a session or I was, playing in church every Sunday, it was coming from both places, and I think in the music, it's always been my pursuit to kind of live in that middle ground between both things,
Yeah, I remember looking through one of your interviews, even mentioning how you spent some time outside of the Coltrane house, and then you even visited Cousin Mary once in Philadelphia. I'm sure those experiences really helped shape sort of your interest and movement in jazz.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, and so then after your time in Philadelphia, what made you end up going to New York and attending Juilliard and things like that? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I just, my parents wanted me to go to college. I also thought it wasn't a bad idea.
Sure.
And Juilliard was probably my first choice. I wanted to be with Wynton. That was a big reason why I went. And then also, I also really enjoyed the music of the 1920s, the music of the 1930s. And that seemed to be the only collegiate institution that I could go to actively play that music. Music of like Don Redman, Fletcher Henderson, King Oliver. I didn't think I would get that anywhere else. So that was a big. Those were two reasons for me going there, was kind of to fill in the holes in my playing and really get a good 4 years of playing older music that I probably would never do again in my life. and I haven't yet.
Mhm.
I haven't played that much older music since then. But I'm thankful for it. And yeah, it was also just about being in New York. I know I wanted to go to New York, and be in the scene. Any musician that would come to Philadelphia, I would always go to their shows, badger them after the gig, and ask them a bunch of questions,
Mhm.
including Jason. Um, and so I felt like a lot of the musicians in New York would be able to kind of take me under their wing and nurture me,
Yeah.
kind of get me into the scene.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So while you were at Juilliard, it seems like, I mean, you've played with so many great musicians, Gerald Clayton, Wynton Marsalis, you were talking about. Were a lot of these gigs, did you get them while you were at school?
Yeah, man, I was hustling. I was
Yeah.
hustling. uh, I yeah, my whole philosophy was like late nights, early mornings.
Mhm.
I had 9 a.m. classes, 8 a.m. classes, but I was also trying to be at Smalls with Roy Hargrove at
Yeah.
3 in the morning.
Mhm.
So there was no balance. When people ask me like, how do you balance this? Like, no balance, man. I'm an artist. Like balance. We don't have balance. Like, hey, what are we balancing? Like, no, we live like teeter tottering. So I was always about kind of giving 200%. It was never like 50-50 or 75-25. It was like, no, I got to just give 100% to both things, to being active on the scene, to meeting musicians, to, going to Aaron Parks' house and working on composition, but then also going to Andy Farber's composition class,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in terms of that schedule, I mean, you said like balance. There's no such thing as balance.
Yeah.
Were there times though that became taxing and you had to maybe take a little bit, or did you just manage to sort of maintain that somehow? Were there any tricks or stuff that you would tell yourself to kind of
Man, it's interesting
strategies?
how there's no strategies. I have no good answers, but I think the really astonishing thing about the human body is that you find like things work out,
Mm.
however they work out. And um I made it a point to say I'm going to do both things, and obviously there are moments where you give in to one or the other.
Yeah.
Um, but if the mentality is I give 100% to both things, I had great grades, and I also we're playing a lot of gigs and missing a lot of school.
Mhm.
Um, and so if you had a mentality of like, look, I'm going hard in both uh, both parts of life. I think it's possible to do it. I was just on top of like making sure I knew the handbook for one. It's like I need to know what my rights are in terms of
Yeah,
getting in trouble.
for sure.
But then also, I was really on top of like emailing my teachers, having really good relationships with my teachers, and they understood. If like I remember my first tour with Jason Moran was I think it was like a month-long tour, and so I hit all my teachers up in the beginning of summer, like, hey guys, I'm gonna be missing like a month. How can we make it work?
Mhm.
So it was very much so a collaborative process with my teachers, in terms of and they understood. It was like, oh yeah, like that, they're on the scene too, so they knew Jason. Jason was their friend, so they're like, oh yeah, you should definitely do this. It's a great opportunity. Let's figure out how you can, make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talking about sort of the New York scene and playing with some of these like absolutely incredible musicians, when you're first time meeting certain musicians, such as like Wynton Marsalis or something, what kind of approach do you take? Are you trying to stay calm or just being yourself, or like what kind of advice would you give someone to handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, I think what I really realized is that a lot of um, a lot of the scene in general is very much so about kind of building relationships, kind of a like a homie mentality, you know. And what I realized is like it paid off the most when I was just like developed just like really good friendships with people. You know, me and Air Park just became really cool friends. It was never like a like he understood there was a deep respect from me, but it was never like I was never like the annoying little kid, you know. But I mean, you know, I also was that to some people, you know, and that also works, you know. But I think it's really just about like kind of being honest and being really yourself, you know. Me being the annoying little kid was nice because they recognized that it was genuine, you know.
Right.
It was like me being like, yo, what should I be checking out? Like, you know. But I don't think I remember, yeah, I used to be like really starstruck. But once you move to New York, it really that goes away really fast because like you're at Smalls at 2 a.m. with the heaviest dudes and they're just chilling. You know, they're not doing anything. You know, it's not. It's the barriers kind of go away because everyone's kind of on the same playing field in New York. You know.
So you like slowly get acclimatized to that setting, and then you can't be starstruck all the time, right? So
yeah. It's just like, all right, that's
just how it is here.
Yeah.
We read up that you actually played with Bob Dylan at some point. Is that correct? Or
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was it was a Wynton Marsalis's record, United We Swing. It was just an overdub.
Okay.
But yeah, it was cool. He wasn't in the studio, but it was cool to like be playing next to Wynton while like Bob Dylan's in my headphones. You know, it's kind of wild. I'm like, oh wow. So, like, all right, here's Wynton right next to me, and we're playing along with Bob Dylan. You know, so it was cool.
Mm-hmm. And another one that stuck out and seemed like was you played with Solange. Was that on like a tour or like a big pop show, or what was that?
That was we did a couple dates, or a lot of dates. One was at the Guggenheim Museum.
Okay.
It was it's kind of like a performance art piece, and it was like partially us kind of remixing some music from her second to last record, not When I Get Home.
A seat at the
table.
Yeah.
So it was like a part of us kind of remixing that, and then also like there was a period at the end of the show where we straight up like played free for like maybe 2 minutes. It's just like, and we're talking like large bands, you know. And so it was really cool. That was a great project. And then I did some shows in LA. We did FYF Fest. That was a huge crowd. That was really fun.
Yeah. So what was that like? Would your approach be different to playing with this big group, playing with Solange, and like for example at that festival in Los Angeles, this massive like stadium show versus a club in New York?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, creatively, I have way less say, you know.
Yeah.
But what was nice is I actually really trusted her in the situations. She was really a part of the process. Usually with like big pop stars like that, the musicians are pretty much, on their own until the gig. Yeah, very separated. Like I did the Victoria's Secret fashion show with Shawn Mendes, and like he came in and we sound checked and then we did the gig, you know. So with Solange, I was really, she was making the she was creating the choreography, she was creating the horn parts, she was all of that. She played a part in everything. She came up with the idea like, I'm thinking maybe at the end of the concert we just like play free for like 2 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
So she was really a part of the process. So it kind of gained a lot of trust from all of the musicians. It was like, oh yeah, sure, we were with it, and it came out really, really great.
Yeah, and we did touch on Philadelphia a little bit and sort of like the scene and stuff. I was kind of curious because we didn't get to it. How did you, like, what age were you when you initially started playing the saxophone, and like what was that first sort of introduction to music like?
So I started playing music when I was 3. I started on violin.
Wow. Okay.
And it was sad. I was whack. On violin. And I tried piano. Also was pretty whack. And I tried singing. Also, I wasn't good at it. And really, what it kind of was I knew I liked music, but I hadn't found the correct vessel to really kind of, do what I wanted to do. And I found out you could join the band early in the 3rd grade if you had your own instrument. So I badgered my parents to give me a saxophone, which really just ended up being next in line. It was like, well, let's just try this out, and it stuck, it really stuck. So, and that was 8th grade. I'm sorry, 3rd grade. I think you're 8 years old in 3rd grade. So it's something like that.
Okay. And so was jazz being played in the house, or like how did you get exposed to that? Or
my pops played trombone and flute, and my mom was a dancer. Both things were kind of before I was born, but in the house there was a lot of the arts. There's a lot of music. And I think my first real record that I can remember is a James Brown like Essentials record, and I thought I knew all the songs off the album, but really I was just kind of singing gibberish, But yeah, so I was like, black music was always kind of around. My parents loved like Graham Central Station, Prince, yeah. So
yeah, like because we did a little research and we saw like a video of you when you're 12 years old playing on giant steps.
Oh man, oh Lord, humble beginnings.
No, but still very impressive for that such a young age, right? I mean,
12 years old. It's I don't think most kids.
Yeah, I was definitely hungry. I liked playing. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I mean, growing up, sort of, just outside Philadelphia, but you were obviously in the city a lot. I guess you were probably born sort of right when the neo-soul movement was happening in Philadelphia. Jill Scott and the Roots and those jam sessions, all those legendary stories. Did you feel that influence in the city as well?
Totally. Jill Scott was a big influence when I first started. And also all of her musicians were on the Philly scene, and so like even at the same time as me like playing with the Sunrise Orchestra or Mickey Roker, or like Edgar Bateman, who lived in Philly, on the jazz scene, like there was also like Spanky McCurdy or Adam Blackstone or Corey Riker, Matt Cappy, who were playing in Jill Scott's band, or playing a lot of bands at that time. And so, that was a big influence on me as well. I mean, that's some of my favorite music for sure.
And if we could talk a little bit about practicing and sort of practice sessions, and so when you, I guess it must have changed over time, but what is sort of your approach to practicing, and how do you set it up, and what are you spending your time on and stuff? Maybe you could go into that a little bit.
Yeah, man, a lot of it is, my practice routine is really boring. I do a lot of long tones. I'm all about the essentials. It's like long tones, a lot of etudes. If I can plug some books, close etudes, I do those. I do furling etudes. Guy Lacour is good. Universal method for saxophone. A lot of it's that, and then transcription. I think that usually covers all my bases of what I need to know, or what I need to work on. you can find something in all of those things that will help with whatever you have problems with. And a lot of it became me kind of making little equations up to fix my problems. So if I had problems with articulation, then I would check out Coleman Hawkins and play the Furling Etude number 2, you know? So it got down to what I kind of touched on before of like, you know, kind of understanding just like that deep DNA of like what makes something what it is, you know, what is the purpose of the Furling Etude, you know, and then like what aspects of Coleman Hawkins or what aspects of someone's playing has like who has good articulation, you know, Cannonball Adderley, Coleman Hawkins. Those are the first two that come right off the bat for me, you know, Clifford Brown, you know, and so understanding that, and then maybe doing some work on the metronome, you know, just kind of, you know, just I would just make up little exercises for myself, just, you know, just based in logic, you know. That's really what it kind of came down to.
Sure. And in terms of hours, like what was sort of, how many hours were you doing a day roughly?
Man, I would do like, I could do about 5 hours, 6 hours. Now, I mean, now it's really about just having the horn out. Like, keeping the horn out allows me to spend all day doing it, you know, and just doing it in doses. And it becomes a 12-hour thing versus like a concerted, you know, I might do like a concerted hour and then, you know, go do something else. And then, you know, especially when I'm in New York. Right now I'm in Philly at my house, and it's a little bit more lax, you know. But when I was in New York, or whenever I'm there, I just put my horn on the stand, and it turns into an all day kind of festivity.
And that, like, 5 hours, 6 hour practice sessions, was that consistent for you, you know, throughout high school or university even, or?
Yeah, I think it was. Consistency was really important, and repetition was important, you know. And whether that meant, you know, repetition in terms of like over, you know, the macro or in the micro. So, you know, as much as I was practicing the same things over and over within the 6 hours, I was also practicing the same kind of ideas over and over, like, you know, months. Time.
And this may seem like a bit of a simple question, but I think a lot of different musicians have different philosophies about practicing and you know, different ways of going about it. Do you enjoy practicing? Like, do you enjoy really working through those long tones and the etudes?
I do. But it's the same feeling I get from like working out, you know. So it, like, some of it hurts, you know, but it feels really good after, you know. But then some things I enjoy, you know, like I enjoy lifting weights, you know, but I really don't like doing planks, you know, like planks really, they those things, man, you know. But so it's like in my, you know, but it's all a part of working out. And at the end, I'm like, whoa, I'm done. Like, this feels great, you know. And the same with practicing. I enjoy certain aspects of it, and I don't others, but it always feels really good afterwards.
For sure.
And also just understanding that you're kind of contributing to a larger progress is it feels good, you know.
Yeah, and you mentioned you're in Philadelphia right now, but you were living in New York before, and we're just kind of interested in getting like a little bit of information, like how have things changed recently, you know, with the pandemic and everything, and what's happened to all the musicians in New York. And, you know, how's everyone doing?
I'm back and forth. I still have my apartment there, so like I'm going up tomorrow for like about 4 or 5 days. But yeah, it's tricky. A lot of people are creating opportunities, which is really good to see. There's a lot of stuff popping up things to do, places to play outside or live streamed. But yeah, it's a tough time for everybody. I've been thankful to be able to have a family close to me, where it's like Philly's only an hour or 2 hours away from New York City. So I was able to kind of make this trip back. But a lot of people are, hunkering down in New York. And a lot of people don't have the luxury to, I'm playing the Blue Note with Joel Ross on Friday. So people don't have the luxury to take gigs in New York, while still living, away. So I think everybody's experience is different in terms of handling this. But I think, I've belief in artists during this time to keep creating, and also for presenters to find interesting ways to still, present the music to the people, which is good.
So what's your sort of daily schedule look like right now at this point, and like, how are you filling up your days?
Man, it's a lot of things. It's really right now. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of practicing. It's a lot of working out. It's a lot of watching a lot of movies. Like simply. And then there's some like random stuff that I've been interested in, like set design or like. I've always been into visual art, and museums just kind of opened back up. So I've been going to a lot of museums, again, which is I'm thankful for that. I don't know, video editing, I don't anything, it's kind of like this time kind of lends itself to just, more random stuff.
Sure, studying things you'd never get the chance to otherwise, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been cool. And a lot of family time. I'm home, so that's nice,
Cool. Yeah, we've kind of starting to get to the point where we wanted to wrap it up, and we wanted to maybe ask you a little bit about some future plans you have, like things that you're maybe have set up. I heard that you might be going to the studio again soon to record another thing, or
yeah, man. Hopefully soon. We have enough music for about 5 more albums. So
that's good to hear.
So yeah, we're ready at any point. But yeah, I got some stuff coming up. I have something in Brooklyn at Roulette that'll probably be live streamed, and that's a commissioned work, a new work. And I'm also doing a collaboration with a dance company. This lady, Sidra Bell Dance New York is the name of the company. We're doing some works in progress in November, and then the premiere will be some time after that. But those are the 2 things that I'm really developing right now, along with actually, 3 things. And then Kimmel Center commission. I've been artist in residence at the Kimmel Center for, I guess, since January. But things kind of obviously shut down, so it's been on sort of a halt. But we're still working on finalizing everything with that. So those 3 things are keeping me busy.
That's good. Yeah. And if we could just circle back for a second to the live stream shows. I mean, it's been great for us here because we're getting to see, these crazy New York musicians in our own living rooms, the live shows. But how is it different for you as a performer? Do clubs in New York, are they allowing anyone in at this point, or is it no audience?
Smalls is allowing, like, I think it's like 25% capacity, so there's like maybe 8 people.
Yeah.
But I haven't played Smalls yet. The Jazz Gallery is allowing, like, I think like 3 or 4 people in, and the tickets are like $80, $60, $70, $80. And the idea is, it's basically nothing's open yet, but it's slowly they're allowing, people in. I was telling somebody what I really miss the most is like having like 100 people packed in a room to listen to like 4 people, just like the way the energy kind of transfers in that way. It's like, like 100 people putting like a bunch of energy all on like 4 people on stage. You know, I miss what that feels like.
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
so.
Sure. And then for like maybe a last question, just I like to ask artists about their sort of biggest musical or just artistic influences in general at the end. Do you want to list some names or talk about certain people just to kind of top it off?
Yeah, I mean, definitely gospel music, any gospel music. But then also uh, for saxophone, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, those are the obvious. And then Ornette Coleman, Henry Threadgill, uh, Benny Carter, Ben Webster, Kenny Garrett. Uh, yeah. And for composition, Brian Blade,
Okay.
Aaron Parks, Ambrose Akinmusire, gospel music once again.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Immanuel Wilkins, for taking the time today, and we hope everyone goes and checks out your album, Omega, and we look forward to seeing what you do in the future. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Thank y'all. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Fun.
All right. Well.